Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whoever you are. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Frying Pan Podcast, episode 8. For those who are tuning in via the Google Plus website, you will notice that I, to excuse my French, look like shit. This is because I have been drinking for three days consecutively and have only recently kind of come off the great wave of elation that a good old-fashioned drinking binge brings. Hence the quality of my features and general ability to formulate a sentient thought will be severely impaired during this podcast. As always, I'm joined by friend and fellow writer Rowan Kane in Indonesia. How you doing there, Rowan?
I'm hanging in there, Lou, as always. Might have one of those 3-day drinking binges coming up in the not too distant future. So I might be in your situation before too long. But I'm sorry to hear that you're feeling the after effects. Was there a certain occasion for the imbibement, or was it just kind of random?
Well, I had some family out here in Andalusia for the week, so there was a lot of spending time in restaurants, in bars, and I'm not a very good entertainer, so to speak, and I also have a borderline issue with drinking, quantity issue, should we say, and it sort of spiraled out of control from Friday night, really, and sort of post-work, having a few, which turned into sort of Saturday morning, waiting for the appropriate hour, which was 12, and then kind of carrying a full day of that, and then doing the same yesterday also. So no, there wasn't really any reason for it, as there never really is often.
Sure.
Anyway, today we have a little bit of a different podcast for you, because we are going to talk today about hangovers, which, as part of the expat experience, certainly personally, are very prevalent here, and almost have taken on a weekly schedule, one could say, of what I have to deal with on, I'd say a good sort of 3 to 4 days a week basis. Anyway, tell me, Rowan, I mean, does a sort of excessive alcohol consumption define your time in Indonesia at all?
Not to the degree that it seems to define small town Spain's, but the hangovers here have been as bad as they are anywhere else, if not worse. And I think a lot of that has to do with the oppressive heat that really just puts really kind of sticks a knife into the throws that I'll change up my metaphors. Throws some salt on an already open wound. When you can't get comfortable, you're constantly sweating, which means you're even more dehydrated. You're sticky, greasy, whatever, and on top of that, your head feels like it is going to implode upon itself in the most black hole fashion possible. I've had some bad ones in the past couple months that really just kept me in bed all day. And yeah, I don't know, how does it affect you? What are your normal symptoms?
Well, it's interesting, actually. I've been drinking for quite a long time, and hangovers, I put them into what I would describe as 2 distinct categories now. I don't know about you, Rowan. I'm 26 now, and they're a whole heap worse than they used to be. Sort of 18-year-old underage Louis had a much better time of it than his current incarnation does. So I have a theory about this. Well, I have to, broadly speaking, I can now divide the hangover into 2 parts. The first is what I call the head of fire, which I think is what you're sort of touching on there. And this is primarily defined by a terrible headache and is usually the result of excessive spirit consumption or very low quality wine, both of which are abundant here in Spain. And it does happen occasionally. With the head of fire, it's quite incapacitating, but it's of the two, it's actually my favorite, and here's why. Second one I call the slow burner, which is what I have at the moment. The slow burner is, well, to cut a long story short, it's the sort of covert hangover. I woke up this morning, I was actually not too bad, like I managed to have a shower and stuff and actually function as a human being, and then came into work to do what I have to do for later on. And it just kind of, with every hour, things and basic motor skills seem to become almost impossible until it reaches, I don't know, in about an hour, I think it will have peaked. I can't do anything, eat, write, think at all. And this is the standard one here. And I think, well, you touched on the fact that it's very hot. This certainly exacerbates the problem a lot. Being 35 degrees, I think, today, and just baking is a very, very grim situation.
Yeah. So, I think I'm glad you put a name to those two types of hangovers, because I do have the same types, I guess. I wouldn't call mine a head of fire. Mine's more just a jackhammer almost that's right behind my forehead and will sit there all day, and the only thing that gets rid of it is sleep, and anything other than sleep just hurts. Blinking hurts, breathing hurts, thinking hurts. And the other one is I really agree with the term the slow burner. Wake up, you feel okay, you feel like you can maybe take care of some things today. You start to take care of some things, and mine normally hits between 2 and 4 o'clock is the average, and I need to take a nap. There's nothing else I can do other than go to my room, go to my bed, and fall asleep for as long as possible to get rid of it. My motor skills kind of stay intact, but every other will to live deserts me. But yeah, and so here, it's only really been beer, and you can kind of feel it coming on the night before. That's mainly what I drink here is beer, because that's really all there is. There's a couple of, we think we've spoken about this on a previous podcast, and you can kind of feel the hangover coming on the night before when you're so dehydrated that your mouth just tastes like metal, and you're kind of cotton-mouthy, and you feel the headache coming already, and it's just one of those, you know what, fuck me, because tomorrow's gonna be hell.
It's gonna be crap. Yeah. It's the this is very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. It does also happen here, and the metal mouth thing is a very good sort of defining characteristic of the slow burner, which, as I say, I have a perfect example of today. You mentioned there that the only cure is sleep, and I've been sort of drinking to excess for about 10 years now, which is quite a long time, more or less. And I've still yet to find any kind of particular cure, especially here in Spain. Is there anything in Indonesia that they? Well, actually, first question for you is there a hangover in Indonesia? Some countries they just don't do this kind of shit. Like
well, So this is interesting. And sorry to cut you off there, but
no,
I'm not sure Indonesians actually get like serious hangovers. This is something that popped into my mind a couple days ago, actually. So topical or recent. I don't know if Indonesians get hangovers. I've never heard of it. I need to do some more research. I need to go out and get a survey done, maybe do some statistical analysis. But I'm not sure if they get hangovers. To combat the hangovers, so to answer your kind of follow-up question, that there's no real like big greasy breakfast or anything like that to attack it. For me, I've heard eggs do the trick, but it's never actually done anything for me. Or eggs have chemicals that are supposed to do the trick, but that never really works. Spicy food's supposed to work as well, which, as we mentioned last week, there's plenty of that here. But yeah, no, there's no real kind of in America you'd go to a diner for the big hangover. In Scotland, it's the big Sky, it's a full Scottish or full English or whatever. But yeah, what about there? Is there something that you guys do to take care of yourself?
Well, again, this is the main problem in Spain is, I mean, there's many of these countries, like, I don't know, if you're Indonesian, your Bahasa is up to it. If they have a word for a hangover, if they have, they might not even think of it as a concept. In Spain, it is a concept. It's una resaca, but they're kind of, well, as I say, we've touched on this in a previous podcast. Their inability to seem outwardly very drunk probably affects their hangover the next day also. The main problem is, again, it's their food is very ill-suited to the idea of having a very, very bad hangover. It's the last thing you want is sort of thick stews or anything with mayonnaise on it. One of the best things, actually, apparently, that's been told to me was, we mentioned it two podcasts ago, with the cup of snail stock that is served with snails. This apparently is the hangover cure of the moment, which I would never, ever drink if I felt like this. It would take, I mean, something fucking crazy would have to happen for me to even put that anywhere near my near my body. So here it is, unfortunately, sort of, it's not suited. It's not the same way the Americans or the Scots do. They have a culture that's almost geared towards excessive drinking, and thus combats it the next day. But here, it just doesn't seem to be the same thing, which is a great pity.
Yeah. So apart from the heat, what is the worst thing about living in rural Spain that can happen during a hangover?
The heat is definitely the main thing. However, I can draw on two things here which are incredibly annoying when you feel like this. The first is that Spanish people tend to do things at very strange times, which means they, for example, wake up at 7 o'clock and decide to cut down the date tree outside my house, which requires, this is a good example of this. There is one man in the town whose job is actually the most pointless job in the world, which is he has a large sort of, whatever you call a vacuum cleaner that blows. I don't know the word for it. It's leaf like blower.
It's a leaf blower.
Yeah, this thing. So it's like a big fucking tube, which he goes around the square blowing leaves into other parts of the square. And then when he's blown them there, he just goes over to the new pile and blows them a bit further along. And the thing sounds like one of those like sailboat, the sort of fan boats from Florida and Louisiana. It's really, really fucking loud. He does this at usually about 7 in the morning on a Saturday, which is great. That's wonderful. So in keeping with the theme of noise, also the church bells outside my window, God in his almighty wisdom decided that Sunday morning at 9 would be a great time when people want to go and sing monosyllabic songs in a big building next to my house. It just so turns out that I'm often not one of those people, and I have to deal with that. So we've got church bells, we've got hymns, we've got the leaf blower. There's one thing that is totally unique about the noise here, which is if you are waking up on a Sunday morning in, say, small town Scotland, or even a city, yes, it's very messy and there's lots of broken glass, and like it looks like a scene from an apocalyptic movie, but there's never anyone there. Like no one does anything. Like the streets are fucking deserted. Whereas here, people seem to like kind of get up. They get up quite early, and the way they talk to people is if someone's really far away, they will just have a conversation with them, but with shouting instead of moving towards each other and having a reasonable conversation, which I don't have to fucking hear. So that these three things are some of the main things. In terms of the other senses that the hangover really affects here, I would say at the moment, because the harvest, the agriculture, I don't have a fucking clue what it is about, but at the moment there is like the slurrying of the fields. Which is like this really potent mixture of chicken and pig shit that they sort of slosh all over the fields around here because it's really good for olives, I think, to make olive trees grow. So all of September, actually, and actually during this podcast recording, they have clearly done it because the smell is seeping in. Once we have the frying pan 4D experience, then I can...
That's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming in 2016. Coming fall 2016.
Absolutely. And then I can share this fantastic experience with you. But those would be the defining points of why it is very bad. Also, I don't have any internet in my flat, which is a bit of a shame, because the kind of the cycle of watching The Simpsons and going on hardcore pornography that sort of defines most of my sort of hangover experiences is taken from me. So it's just a matter of sitting watching TV, which is in Spanish and thus a bit shit.
Yeah. For Indonesia, I would say it's driving. If you have to drive anywhere, the traffic is awful, or the roads are so windy that it's already nauseating without being nauseous already, or on the verge of bile. They burn their trash here as well. So there'll just be like clouds of kind of smoke coming into your bedroom at certain hours of the day. And as far as noise goes, there's chickens and roosters everywhere. So they can go off at like 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and not stop until like mid-morning.
It's a problem here too.
Yeah. So I think we those the multiple sensory overload that comes. Because that's the other thing about hangovers is all your senses are heightened and super sensitive, I guess is But there's your every noise is painful, every smell makes you want to throw up. We're really just preaching like we're just stating the obvious here. Hangovers suck.
Yeah. There's really no way out. And I mean, in terms of coming to any kind of recognizable conclusion in this podcast, I don't think we will.
No, absolutely.
It's very difficult. The one thing that I've never quite figured out at all, and I mean, I'm a relatively smart guy, but I've done this now for fucking years, and like it gets worse and worse every time. And I think every time, like, oh my god, like I feel like. There's been occasions when I've thought like I would maybe, if I was given the option of death or like having to deal with this, I might actually take the former. What I can't really figure out is why I keep doing it, and that's like the big mystery for me. And this, I mean, I could say like the last 10 years have been a scientific study to figure out why, but it hasn't really been that at all. So. With every worsening hangover, the mystery for me becomes deeper and deeper. And
It's always, oh fuck, I should never drink like this again. Why do I do this? Why do I do this to myself? This is the worst possible feeling. This is the worst I've ever felt. I will never feel this worse again. And then that next time comes around and you have that extra beer you shouldn't have had, or you mix in a glass of shitty wine, and the next morning it's hell on earth. It's hell on earth.
It's very interesting. I mean, I'll finish up with this now that, like, I'd say after sort of 10 years, of the slow burner is my hangover of, it's my defining one anyway, the slow burner. The feeling of getting over a slow burner, when you get over the hump, which happens at 7 o'clock, has now actually, that feeling of relief and joy is better than the feeling of getting drunk the night before.
100%. 100%. And you're absolutely right. 7 o'clock on the dot is when it turns. 7 o'clock in the evening, boom, everything is better. You wake up from a nap and the world is brand new. Even if you can still kind of taste it or feel it, like at the very, very back of your being, it's wonderful. Or when that doesn't happen, when you're dead all day and you wake up the next morning.
Yeah.
Oh man. And that makes it all better. That makes it all better. That erases every feeling of doubt that you'd had that you would never drink again. It's like, oh, this is the most wonderful thing in the world. I don't feel like I'm being crucified for whatever.
No, I totally get it.
For having an extra beer. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating, but it's genuinely that feeling. It's like, I mean, I guess this is like why Buddhists believe in sort of regeneration, but it's literally this. It's like that's some relatable religion for me there. Like fucking regeneration, like suddenly getting over that period when it's like it's going to only get better from here. That feeling is better than getting drunk, which is crazy. It didn't used to be, because I didn't used to have such bad hangovers, but like it's a fascinating subject, maybe around the age of 22 or something. Now that feeling, like when you've just had, like, I don't know, a cup of tea or something, or some pot noodle, it just suddenly clicks, and you just feel like the most like productive and wonderful human being in God's green earth. And
the church of the hangover with Louis, with Father Louis.
Yeah, it's something I might look into at some point. There's got to be a sect for me there.
Well, one more question. What is the worst hangover you've ever had?
Ever. My first hangover, actually, which I can go into detail, which was I was very young, actually. It was the first time I ever had very bad alcohol poisoning, but I had I don't remember anything actually after drinking a bottle of, one of those sort of small bottles of vodka in someone's toilet in a house party. I woke up the next day completely naked in my house, sort of spread-eagled, cross of St. Andrew's style on my bed. My mum came in and just presented me with like a mop and bucket, and said, like, on you go. And it turned out that I had thrown up all over the floor. That was like a given, but also slightly crapped myself too, and had also pissed my pants. So it was like,
that's happened since as well, right? Because I think we've gone into that.
Yeah, it's like variations on a theme, that one. Anyway, and there was sort of like 2 large piles of sick on the floor, which I had to then clear up. But obviously having alcohol poisoning, like even looking at it, made me throw up more. So it was this Herculean task of cleaning up sick. And it was the first time I ever had alcohol poisoning. I genuinely thought I was going to die. And nobody felt very sorry for me. So that was one of the worst. One that runs it very close was also one in St. Andrews, where again, vodka, me and my a Russian friend, who actually the other editor of Talking Soup, we drank a bottle of vodka together using pickles as a chaser.
Which is actually not the worst thing in the world. It gets you drunk, but it's not a bad taste. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all. Like, it was great. And then the next day was terminal, like absolutely terminal, just like sort of throwing up this sort of mixture of pickle and vodka. And yeah, that was bad. That was like that was when I used to get another kind of hangover, actually, which I don't get anymore, so I didn't address it, which is called the rollover, which is like a single instance of drinking, which is so severe that the hangover you have is then like the next day you have a hangover of that hangover, like a smaller.
Yeah.
It's like an offshoot hangover.
Had that a couple times. Yeah.
It's only usually from like a lot of spirits and then a day of hangover and then like a half hangover.
Yeah. Mine was also at St. Andrews, and it was the first time I had what do you call it? Like the death, like just death, just like, it was actually a rollover because it did take me 2 days to fully get over it. But it was after May Dip.
Oh, okay.
And a buddy of mine, buddy and I were all the way, it was our last May Dip. So year after you left. And he for some reason had a bottle of not Malibu, but the Tesco version of Malibu, which is Cocoa something.
It's called like Cocoa Sunrise or something like that. I do know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Had a bottle of that, and we walked home and we're drinking that, and the next day, it hurt to blink. It hurt to blink. That was the first really deathly one I had, and it's still to me the worst. I took some Tylenol at like 8 o'clock in the evening and probably threw up because I hadn't eaten anything all day or whatever. I just took some some ibuprofen at literally 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening, and just threw up.
Yeah, it was rented, completely rented.
Yeah.
No.
So shall I move on to? Yeah, shall I move on to happier times with our weekly expat experience?
Absolutely, yeah. Though I'll have to have a quick think. But tell me, Rowan, what's your expat experience this week?
Well, I guess I have to update the folks on Bali United's fate in the second leg. They fell 3-2 to Arema, the team from Malang. So they have crashed out. They have crashed out of the Piala President's Cup. Arema was too strong. They had a core of foreign players that were too big and too strong for the boys from Bali. And despite taking the lead twice, they went up 1-0. Arema scored. They went up 2-1. Arema scored, and then Arema scored again. So it was the worst part was the hopes were raised and then crashed pretty quickly. But if you saw how the defense was playing, you would. It wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a surprise.
Okay.
Just a shambles in the back, a tight shambles, if you will.
A tight shambles. Fantastic.
Yeah. That was I think a 6-a-side team name at St. Andrews that we played.
Well done. Good pun. Yeah. It's an excellent pun.
But yeah, so me and four other Bali United guys went up, or my friends went up, and we got into the VIP section, which was kind of like the middle of the field on one side. And it was too full, so like our group got pulled up and sat in like the royal presidential box in these big like comfy chairs. But we were actually sitting behind one of the players, like the star player for the other team's family. So it was a little awkward when we were cheering. He's the one that scored the hat trick. Actually, all 3 goals were by a Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. That doesn't sound like a particularly Indonesian name.
No, but although he is an Indonesian citizen now, so he I think it's originally Uruguayan, but now he's an Indonesian citizen. So that was it, and so there'll be no more Bali United in this abbreviated season. But yeah, shame. So what about you, Lou? Have you come up with one?
Well, I mean, I don't really have an expat experience. This sort of section of the program is actually to do with things that you don't do in your home country. But what I did this weekend, for example, which was getting drunk every day, is something that I vehemently do with quite a lot of startling regularity in Scotland or America or anywhere. Unfortunately, it's been exactly the same for as long as I can remember. So yeah, we're.
What about your family visiting? Your family doesn't visit you when you're home.
Yeah, no,
I guess they kind of do.
This is true. This is true. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of tourist stuff this week, kind of driving to different towns, looking at a lot of frescoes in churches, which doesn't happen a lot in Scotland. Say what you will about the Catholic Church, but they know how to make the inside of a church look a lot better than the Presbyterians anyway. It's always quite nice. So yeah, did that, wandered around various historical sites in Andalusia, and that's been and consumed a lot of Cruz Campo at the same time.
There you go. Cruz Campo is the local beer, right? Cerveza.
Yeah, it's from Seville.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
Seville, who are not doing very well in the in La Liga.
No, far from it. They, I think they did okay this weekend, but they are terminal. I think they're bottom of the league at the moment. So,
yeah, they were bottom.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, I'll keep tabs on it. It's always difficult going to the Champions League, but yeah. Good.
All right. Well, that was a unexpectedly chipper podcast for the subject.
No, absolutely, and as I can feel beer sweating through my pores right now, I think it's an opportune moment to wrap things up with the Frying Pan episode 8. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed the podcast, go online, write us a review on iTunes. Please write us a good review. If you haven't enjoyed the podcast, you've made it a very long way to the end of it in order to hear me talk about this. Write us a review anyway. Take 2 minutes, helps us keep the podcast going. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on my magazine, talkingsoup.com. It's all sparkly and new. Have a look, it's very good. Or on Twitter at Talking Soup Magazine. Rowan, how do I get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me on my blog, simawongstories.wordpress.com. This week, the story was about the first leg of the Bali United's quarterfinal tie, where they also lost, but you can catch up on that. And this next week should be about the second leg, probably, or something else I decide at the time. You can also on Twitter at RLMKANE. I've been on there a little bit more, specifically tweeting about Tottenham's glorious victory at White Hart Lane over the weekend. Yeah, good talking to you this week, Lou.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I mean, not the way I feel, but it's been good, therapeutic, so to speak.
Good.
Excellent.
Good to hear.
So, ladies and gentlemen, tune in again next week for maybe a slightly more coherent and better looking podcast on a sort of physical basis. See you soon, folks. Rowan, as always, been a pleasure. See you later.
See you later, Lou.
Take care, folks. Adios.